When Martha, newly 72, settled into her elegant brunch spot, she had no idea her life was about to change. She was enjoying her morning coffee when her daughter-in-law, the poised and polished Jennifer, uttered words that pierced her to the core. "We've decided not to invite you for Christmas this year." Martha just nodded, trying to keep her face impassive, but inside, everything shattered. Her son, David, stared at his plate, avoiding her eyes. "Mom, it's just that we want something more intimate this year," he finally mumbled, still not looking at her. Martha wrapped her fingers around her water glass, focusing on the coolness against her skin to ground herself. "I understand," she said, though she didn't. Not really. How could she understand being excluded from Christmas when she'd spent the last 7 years making their celebrations possible? Since Robert died, she'd been the invisible hand keeping their perfect life afloat, the mortgage on their sprawling, yet unaffordable, Tudor-style home, the catering for their lavish holiday parties where Jennifer paraded around like the perfect hostess, the private school tuition for her grandchildren that they insisted was necessary for networking. None of it would exist without her, but they didn't know that. She'd made sure of it. "It's just that Jennifer's college friends are coming with their families, and the house will be full," David added, as if that made it better. "Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching." Jennifer nodded, her blonde hair bouncing perfectly. "We'll do something with you after the holidays, Martha. Maybe in January." Like an afterthought, like an obligation to be scheduled and then checked off a list. Martha forced a smile. "That sounds lovely." The rest of brunch passed in a blur of small talk and mimosas. She asked about the grandchildren's school performances and soccer games. She commented on the weather and Jennifer's new highlights. She played her part perfectly, just as she had for the past 7 years, the beautiful mother and grandmother who never complained, never demanded, never imposed. As David drove her home to her modest 2-bedroom condo, the silence between them felt heavy. He pulled into her driveway but kept the engine running, a clear signal he wouldn't be coming in. "Thanks for brunch," she said, gathering her purse. "Mom," he started, then stopped. For a moment Martha thought he might apologize, might show some flicker of the boy she raised. Instead, he said, "We'll call you about January, okay?" She nodded and stepped out of the car. He didn't wait to see her enter her home before driving away. Inside, Martha moved mechanically through her Sunday routine. She changed into comfortable clothes, made a cup of tea, and sat in Robert's old armchair by the window. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the living room. "They don't want me for Christmas, Robert," she whispered to the empty room. "After everything." She thought about the folder in her desk drawer, the one containing all the bank statements and transfer records. Every month for 7 years, she'd been transferring $3,200 to cover their mortgage, another $1,200 for the children's school, not to mention the gifts that were really necessities, groceries when David was between jobs, car repairs when Jennifer decided they needed a new SUV despite their credit card debt. She never told them it was her. After Robert died and the life insurance paid out, she let them believe David's struggling investment firm had finally turned the corner. It was easier that way, for them to think they were successful on their own, for them to maintain their pride. But pride doesn't keep a roof over your head. Pride doesn't feed your children. Pride doesn't pay for Christmas catering that costs more than her monthly expenses. She opened her laptop and navigated to her banking portal. The automatic transfer for next month's mortgage payment was scheduled for the 1st, just 3 days away. Her finger hovered over the mouse. Would she really do this after 7 years of silent support? Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. David forgot to ask. "We're doing the usual Christmas catering from Yeppies. Can you handle that again this year? Even though you won't be there, we'd really appreciate it. Same as last year for 30 people. No, please." No acknowledgement that she'd paid for their Christmas feast every year since Robert died. Just an expectation. Something inside her. Something that had been bending and bending for years, finally broke. She canceled the scheduled transfer for the mortgage. She typed a brief email to Yeppies Catering, canceling the holiday order. She logged into the private school's parent portal and withdrew her direct payment authorization. Then she closed her laptop, picked up her tea, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. The peace that comes with finally valuing yourself enough to say, no more. They had decided not to invite her for Christmas. She had decided not to be their secret ATM anymore. It took exactly 3 days for her phone to start ringing. The first call came from David, of course. She let it go to voicemail. "Mom, there must be some mistake with the school. They called saying the tuition payment was declined. Call me back." His voice held no concern for her, just confusion about the money. 2 hours later, Jennifer called. "Martha, it's Jennifer. Yeppy says you canceled the Christmas catering. There must be some misunderstanding. Call me ASAP." Again, "No, how are you?" "No, is everything okay?" Just panic about their holiday plans falling apart. She sat in Robert's chair, watching her phone light up throughout the day. By evening, she had 12 missed calls and 8 voicemails, each more urgent than the last. She turned her phone off and poured herself a glass of wine. For the first time in 7 years, she didn't rush to solve their problems. Instead, she pulled out an old photo album from the bookshelf. Robert and she on their wedding day, so young and full of hope. David as a toddler, riding on his father's shoulders. Family vacations where they pinched pennies to create memories. When had it all changed? When had she become nothing more than a financial safety net? After Robert's sudden heart attack, everything shifted. She was 65, suddenly alone in their 4-bedroom colonial house that felt too empty, too full of ghosts. David and Jennifer swooped in with what seemed like concern. "Mom, you shouldn't be in this big house alone," David had said, sitting at her kitchen table a month after the funeral. "It's too much to maintain." Jennifer nodded, her face a mask of sympathy. "We've been looking at houses in Oakwood Estates. It's a beautiful neighborhood with excellent schools for the kids. But with the market the way it is." Martha knew what was coming before they asked. They wanted the house, her house, as a down payment for their dream home. A house they couldn't afford on David's struggling investment firm's salary and Jennifer's part-time work as a real estate agent. "You could move into something smaller," Jennifer suggested. "There are those nice condos by the lake. You'd have no yard to maintain, and the community has activities for seniors." Seniors. The word stung. She was a widow, not an invalid, but she agreed. She sold the house Robert and she had lovingly renovated over 30 years, gave the proceeds to David and Jennifer for their down payment, and moved into a modest condo that cost a third of what their home had been worth. She told herself it was the right thing to do, that David and the grandchildren deserved the stability, that Robert would have wanted them to have a good life. What she didn't expect was how quickly she'd be forgotten once the papers were signed. The first few months, they invited her over regularly: Sunday dinners, school plays, soccer games. She was included, if not central, but slowly the invitations dwindled. Jennifer began making comments about her clothes. "Don't you have something more current, Martha?" Her cooking: "The kids are used to organic now." Her opinions: "That's a very outdated way of thinking." Then came the financial requests, small at first. "Dad's life insurance paid out well, right, Mom?" David asked one day. "My firm is having a temporary cash flow issue. Could you help us this month with the mortgage, just until my commission comes through?" 1 month turned into 2, then 6, then permanent. She never said no. She never mentioned that the life insurance barely covered her own expenses and that she was dipping into her retirement savings to help them. She never revealed that their temporary financial problems were costing her her security. Meanwhile, Jennifer's expectations grew. The children needed private school connections. The house needed a renovation to keep up with neighbors. Christmas had to be catered because everyone in their circle had professional holiday dinners. Each time she received a request, always framed as temporary, always presented as essential, she transferred the money silently. No questions asked, no recognition expected. Last Christmas had been the breaking point, though she hadn't realized it then. She'd spent weeks choosing perfect gifts for everyone, a cashmere sweater for Jennifer, golf clubs for David, thoughtfully selected toys for each grandchild. She'd arrived early to help set up, bringing homemade cookies from Robert's mother's recipe. Jennifer had taken one look at the cookies and said, "Oh, we don't need those. The caterer is bringing petit fours." Her cookies were relegated to the kitchen, never served. Her gifts were opened with cursory thanks before everyone moved on to the main event, the extravagant presents David and Jennifer gave the children, presents she had unknowingly financed. During dinner, she was seated at the far end of the table, away from the children, beside Jennifer's hard-of-hearing uncle. She could barely participate in the conversation. When she tried to share a Christmas memory of Robert, Jennifer quickly changed the subject. "Let's keep things upbeat, shall we?" she'd said with a tight smile. Martha had driven home that night with tears in her eyes, but still she transferred the money for January's mortgage payment the next day. Still, she continued the cycle, until now. She closed the photo album and walked to her desk. She pulled out the folder containing 7 years of financial records, bank transfers, tuition payments, catering receipts, cash loans that were never repaid. All totaled, she'd given them over $275,000 since Robert died, more than half of her retirement savings. For what? To be excluded from Christmas? To be treated as an ATM rather than a mother and grandmother? Her phone started ringing again. This time, she answered. "Mom." David's voice was tight with panic. "What's going on?" "The mortgage company called. They said the payment didn't come through." "That's right," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "What do you mean, that's right? There must be some mistake." "No mistake, David. I've decided not to make the payment this month." Silence. "Then, Mom, what are you talking about? You know we're counting on that help." "Like I was counting on being included in Christmas." The words came out before she could stop them. "Is that what this is about? You're punishing us because we wanted one Christmas to ourselves?" That's childish, Mom." Martha felt a flash of anger, hot and clarifying. "Childish? I've paid your mortgage for 7 years, David. I've paid your children's tuition. I funded your lifestyle. All without recognition, all without thanks. And the one time I expect to be included in a family holiday, I'm cast aside as an inconvenience." "Mom, that's not." "It is, David. And I'm done. I've helped you build a life you can't afford, and in return, you've pushed me further and further to the margins of that life. Not anymore. So you're just cutting us off? Over a Christmas invitation?" His voice rose. "What about the kids? Their school? Our house? Those are your responsibilities, David, not mine. I've enabled this situation for too long, and it stops now. You can't do this. We have payments due, plans made." "I just did," she said softly, and hung up. Her hands were shaking. But for the first time in years, she felt something like freedom. The weight of secret responsibility lifting from her shoulders. Her phone immediately rang again. Jennifer this time. She let it go to voicemail. "Martha, this is completely unacceptable. David told me what you said. You can't just pull the rug out from under us because you're feeling left out. You're being selfish and petty. Call us back immediately." Selfish? Petty? For 7 years, she'd sacrificed her financial security, her retirement dreams, even her self-respect to keep them afloat. And she was the selfish one? She turned off her phone again and walked to the balcony of her condo. The December air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine from the small Christmas tree she'd set up in her living room, a modest tree for her modest life. But it was hers. In the morning, she would call her financial advisor. She would reclaim what was left of her retirement. She would finally start living for herself. And perhaps in the distance, she would start looking for a small house by the sea. Something Robert and she had always dreamed about but never achieved. A place where the sound of waves could drown out the noise of ungrateful children and entitled in-laws. A place where she could finally be Martha again, not just David's mother or Jennifer's ATM. Tomorrow would bring more calls, more demands, more guilt. But tonight, watching the stars appear one by one in the winter sky, she felt at peace with her decision. For the first time in 7 years, she chose herself, and it felt right. The next morning, she woke to 27 missed calls and a dozen text messages. She scrolled through them briefly, noting the escalating urgency. "Mom, we need to talk about this." "Martha, you're being ridiculous. The school is threatening to withhold the kids' registration for next semester." "Mom, please call us back. This isn't fair." Fair. The word lingered in her mind as she made her morning coffee. What exactly was fair about their relationship these past 7 years? She called her financial advisor, Richard, who had been Robert's friend for decades. He answered on the second ring. "Martha, good to hear from you. What can I do for you today?" "I need to make some changes, Richard. Significant ones." An hour later, she sat in his office as he reviewed her financial situation, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Martha, you've withdrawn nearly 60% of your retirement savings in 7 years. At this rate, you'll be completely out of funds in another 4 years." She nodded, unsurprised but still feeling the weight of those numbers. "These regular transfers to David's account, $3,200 monthly? That's more than most mortgages in this area." "It is their mortgage," she said quietly. Richard looked up sharply. "You've been paying their entire mortgage? Does David know that's coming from your retirement funds?" "He knows it's coming from me. He doesn't know I'm draining my savings to do it." Richard removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Martha, this isn't sustainable. Not for you. I know. That's why I'm here. I need to stop all automatic transfers, and I need to figure out how to make what's left last for the rest of my life." They spent the next 2 hours restructuring her finances. By the time she left Richard's office, she had a clear picture of her situation. It wasn't as dire as it could have been. She still had her condo, paid for with the small portion of the house sale she'd kept for herself. She had about 40% of her retirement savings left. If she was careful, if she made smart choices, she could still have a comfortable, if modest, life. The sense of relief was overwhelming. Her next stop was the bank, where she formally canceled all automatic transfers to David's accounts. The banker asked if there was a problem. "No," she said, "just a long overdue correction." On the way home, she drove past a real estate office. On impulse, she pulled over and went inside. A young agent greeted her warmly. "I'm looking for information on small coastal properties," she said. "Nothing fancy, just peaceful." "Retiring to the beach?" she asked with a smile. "Something like that." She pulled up some listings on her computer. "There's a small development in Sea Pines, retirement community, but not one of those institutional feeling places. Individual cottages, community center, beach access, very quiet, very charming." Martha looked at the photos of small, neat cottages with wraparound porches, blue water visible in the distance, palm trees swaying in the breeze. "It's about 2 hours from here," she continued. "Close enough for family visits. Far enough for peace." Family visits? Would there be any after what she'd done? The thought gave her pause, but not enough to change her mind. "I'd like to see them," she decided. "Can we arrange a visit for this weekend?" Back at her condo, Martha finally turned her phone back on. The barrage was immediate. 3 new voicemails, all from Jennifer. "Martha, this is completely unacceptable. The mortgage company has sent a late notice. David is beside himself. How could you do this to your own son? If you don't call us back by tonight, we're coming over. This is outrageous." She deleted them all without responding. Then she went to her bedroom closet and pulled out the suitcase she'd used for her last vacation with Robert 7 years ago. They'd gone to Maine, stayed in a little bed and breakfast overlooking the Atlantic. It had been perfect. She began packing a few essentials for her weekend trip to Sea Pines. As she folded a sweater, she heard a sharp knocking at her door. So they'd made good on their threat, earlier than expected, but not surprising. She took a deep breath and went to answer. David stood there, his face flushed with anger. Jennifer hovered behind him, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" David demanded, pushing past her into the living room. Martha closed the door calmly. "Hello to you too, David." "Jennifer, don't us." Jennifer snapped. "You know why we're here?" Martha gestured to the sofa. "Why don't you sit down?" "I don't want to sit down," David said. "I want to know why you've suddenly cut us off without warning." "The mortgage is due. The school needs tuition, and Yeppies won't reschedule our Christmas catering this late." Martha looked at her son, truly looked at him, and saw a stranger, a 45-year-old man who had never learned to live within his means, who had taken his mother's generosity for granted, who stood in her living room not with concern for her well-being, but with indignation that his lifestyle was being threatened. "I've made some financial decisions," she said evenly. "I can no longer support your household expenses." "Can't or won't?" Jennifer challenged. "Both." David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father it made her heart ache. "Mom, if this is about Christmas." "It's not just about Christmas," Martha interrupted. "It's about 7 years of being treated like an ATM rather than a mother. It's about sacrificing my security for your lifestyle. It's about being pushed further and further from your lives while still being expected to fund them." Jennifer's face contorted with indignation. "That's completely unfair. We've always included you." "Have you?" Martha asked quietly. "When was the last time you called me just to chat, not to ask for money? When was the last time you brought the children over just to visit, not because you needed a free babysitter? When was the last time you acknowledged any of my contributions to your life?" David shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, we've been busy. You know how it is with the kids and work. Not too busy to plan an elaborate Christmas party that I'm paying for, but not invited to," Martha pointed out. "It's just one Christmas," Jennifer exclaimed. "You're acting like we've banished you forever." Martha stood up, suddenly weary of the conversation. "I've made my decision. I can't continue supporting you financially. I need to secure what's left of my retirement." "What's left?" David's expression changed. "Mom, are you having money problems?" For the first time, Martha saw a flicker of genuine concern in his eyes. But it was too little, too late. "I've spent over half of my retirement savings supporting your family, David." "That stops now," Jennifer gasped. "Half? That's impossible. It's just been the mortgage and a few expenses." Martha walked to her desk and retrieved the folder of financial records. "Here. Every transfer, every payment, every loan that was never repaid. 7 years worth. $276,340 to be exact." David took the folder with shaking hands. He flipped through the pages, his face growing paler with each one. "Mom, I had no idea it was this much." "Of course you didn't. You never asked. You just took." Jennifer peered over his shoulder, her expression hardening. "Well, it was your choice to help us. No one forced you." "Jennifer." David shot her a warning look. "What?" "It's true. If she was going to hold it over our heads, she shouldn't have offered." "I didn't offer," Martha said calmly. "You asked, repeatedly. And yes, I chose to help. That was my mistake. I'm correcting it now." David closed the folder, looking dazed. "What are we supposed to do? We can't afford the mortgage on our own, the kids' school." "Those are decisions you'll have to make as a family," Martha said. "Downsize, transfer to public school, get second jobs, do what millions of other families do. Live within your means." Jennifer's face flushed with anger. "So that's it? You're just abandoning us because you didn't get a Christmas invitation. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm simply stopping the financial support. You're welcome to visit me anytime. As family, not as financial dependents. They left an hour later, the folder of financial records clutched in David's hands. Neither of them hugged her goodbye. Jennifer didn't even look at her as they walked out. David paused at the door, his expression a mix of anger, confusion, and something that might have been shame. This isn't over, Mom, he said quietly. I know, Martha replied. After they left, she finished packing for her weekend trip to Sea Pines. The real estate agent had confirmed their appointment for Saturday morning. Martha found herself looking forward to it with unexpected excitement. The first trip she'd planned just for herself in years. Friday morning, she loaded her suitcase into her car and set off for the coast, leaving her phone behind on purpose. 2 hours of driving with just the radio for company felt liberating. No demands, no guilt trips, no financial emergencies to solve. Sea Pines was everything the photos had promised, a quiet community of pastel-colored cottages nestled among swaying palms. The real estate agent, Brittany, met her at the community center, a cheerful building with a library, game room, and small cafe. We have 3 available units, she explained as they walked the palm-lined streets, all single-story, 2 bedrooms, with screened porches and small gardens. The first cottage was pale yellow with white trim, set back from the road. Inside, sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating hardwood floors and an open floor plan. The kitchen was small but efficient, the living room cozy with built-in bookshelves. The master bedroom has a view of the water, Brittany said, leading her through. Martha stepped into the bedroom and caught her breath. Through the large window, she could see past the community's walking path to the blue expanse of the Atlantic. The sound of waves drifted in on the breeze. It's perfect, she whispered. Would you like to see the others? Brittany asked. No, this one feels right. They discussed the details over lunch at the community cafe. The price was reasonable, well within what she could afford with her remaining savings, especially if she sold her condo. The monthly association fee covered all exterior maintenance, landscaping, and access to community amenities. Many of our residents are in similar situations, Brittany mentioned as they sipped iced tea. Starting fresh after life changes. Divorces? Martha asked. Some. Others are widowed. Some just decided they were tired of living for everyone else. She smiled knowingly. Family dynamics can be complicated. Martha thought of David and Jennifer, of the chaos she'd left behind. Yes, they can. She didn't make an offer that day. She wanted to think it through carefully, but she knew in her heart she'd found her new home. As she drove back to her condo on Sunday evening, she felt a sense of possibility she hadn't experienced since Robert died. Her answering machine was blinking furiously when she returned, 14 messages. She pressed play, bracing herself. The first few were from David and Jennifer, their tones ranging from angry to pleading. Mom, we need to talk about this. Call me back. Martha, you're being unreasonable. The children will be devastated if we have to move. Then came one from her sister, Elizabeth. Martha, what's going on? David called me in a panic, saying, you've cut them off. Call me when you get this. 2 from friends who'd apparently also heard from David. Then, unexpectedly, one from her 14-year-old granddaughter, Olivia. Grandma, it's Olivia. Mom and Dad are fighting a lot. They say we might have to move or change schools. Dad said it's because you're mad at them. Are you mad at me too? Please call me back. Martha's heart clenched. Olivia, the quiet one who always had her nose in a book. So much like she had been at her age. The one who still hugged her enthusiastically at family gatherings. Who asked about her garden and remembered her birthday. No, she wasn't mad at Olivia or her 11-year-old brother, Noah. They were innocent in all this. She picked up the phone and dialed Olivia's number, hoping she had her own phone and not just access to her parents'. Grandma? Her voice was small, uncertain. Hello, sweetheart. I got your message. Are you mad at us? No, Olivia. Not at you or Noah. Never at you. Then why won't you help Mom and Dad anymore? They said we might have to sell the house and that I can't go to Westlake Academy next year. She sighed, trying to find words a 14-year-old could understand. Sometimes adults make decisions that aren't good for them in the long run. Your parents have been depending on me in ways that aren't healthy for any of us. Because you give them money? Smart girl. Yes, because I give them money. Money I need for my own future. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Dad never said it was your money. He just said you always helped. I know, sweetheart. Are you still coming for Christmas? The innocent question caught Martha off guard. I wasn't invited this year, Olivia. What? But you always come for Christmas. Who's going to make the snowflake cookies? Despite everything, Martha smiled. Your mom told me you all prefer the caterer's desserts. That's not true. Your cookies are the best part. Mom just says that because she can't bake. Martha laughed. Genuinely laughed for the first time in days. Grandma, can I still come see you even if we move? Of course you can. Anytime. In fact, I might be moving too. To a pretty place by the ocean. Really? Can I visit you there? I would love that, Olivia. After they hung up, Martha sat in her quiet living room, thinking. She couldn't go back on her decision. David and Jennifer needed to learn financial independence. But the children shouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes. Perhaps there was a middle path. The following Wednesday, her sister Elizabeth showed up at her door unannounced. We need to talk, she said, brushing past her into the living room. David called me 3 times this week. He says, you've gone off the deep end. Martha sighed, closing the door. Hello to you too, Elizabeth. She turned to face her, arms crossed. At 68, Elizabeth was still the image of their mother, tall, angular, with a no-nonsense expression that could wither flowers. Martha, what's going on? David says you've cut them off completely. That they might lose their house over a Christmas invitation. Martha gestured for her to sit. Would you like some tea? I don't want tea. I want an explanation. Martha sat down anyway, smoothing her skirt. It's not about Christmas, Elizabeth. That was just the final straw. Slowly, she explained the situation, the 7 years of financial support, the gradual exclusion from their lives, the steady drain on her retirement savings. Elizabeth's expression shifted from skepticism to concern as Martha spoke. I had no idea, she admitted finally. David always said his investment business was doing well. He wanted everyone to believe that, including himself, perhaps, Martha said. Elizabeth leaned forward. But, Martha, they're family. If they need help, they need to learn to stand on their own feet, Martha said firmly. I've enabled their financial irresponsibility for too long. It has to stop. And the children? What about them? Martha thought of Olivia's voice on the phone. I'm considering setting up education funds for Olivia and Noah, but directly for their education, not through David and Jennifer. Elizabeth nodded slowly. That's actually quite reasonable. She paused. David didn't mention you'd been paying their mortgage for 7 years? I'm not surprised. It's easier to paint me as the villain than admit the truth. They talked for another hour. By the time Elizabeth left, she had a clearer picture of the situation and was considerably less critical of Martha's decision. You've always been the soft touch, she said as she hugged her goodbye. It's about time you stood up for yourself. 2 days later, Martha received a formal letter from a lawyer representing David and Jennifer. They were demanding she continue the financial support, claiming she had created a dependency and had an obligation to maintain their standard of living. Martha called Richard immediately. Immediately, he laughed when she read him the letter. That's not how the law works. You have no legal obligation to support your adult son's lifestyle. I'll have our legal department send a response. The letter was a new low, even for them. Trying to legally force her to continue funding their extravagance. It was beyond entitled. It was delusional. Martha spent the next week finalizing her plans. She made an offer on the yellow cottage in Sea Pines, which was accepted. She listed her condo with a local real estate agent. She consulted with Richard about setting up education trusts for Olivia and Noah, and she waited for the inevitable confrontation that she knew was coming. It arrived on a Sunday afternoon. Martha was sorting through belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate for her upcoming move, when the doorbell rang insistently. She opened it to find David, Jennifer, and both children standing on her doorstep. Olivia immediately broke away from her parents and hugged her. "Grandma. I missed you." Martha hugged her back, her heart warming. "I missed you too, sweetheart." Noah hung back, looking uncertain. At 11, he was more susceptible to his parents' moods, and their tension was palpable. "Can we come in?" David asked stiffly. Martha nodded, stepping aside. "Of course." Jennifer marched in, her eyes immediately taking in the boxes scattered around Martha's living room. "What's all this?" "I'm moving," Martha said simply. David's head snapped up. "Moving where?" "Sea Pines. It's a coastal community about 2 hours from here." "You didn't tell us you were moving," Jennifer accused. "I wasn't aware I needed your permission," Martha replied mildly. Olivia looked around at the boxes. "Is your new house by the ocean like you said, Grandma?" Martha smiled at her. "Yes, it is. You can hear the waves from the bedroom window." "Cool." Noah finally spoke, his curiosity overcoming his caution. "Can we visit?" "Of course you can," Martha said, ignoring Jennifer's tight expression. "Anytime, children." "Jennifer." Jennifer snapped. "Go watch TV in Grandma's bedroom while we talk." "But, Mom." Olivia began. "Now, Olivia." The children reluctantly retreated to Martha's bedroom. Once they were gone, Jennifer rounded on her. "So this is your solution? Running away to the beach while we lose everything?" Martha met her gaze steadily. "I'm not running away. I'm making a choice about how to spend my retirement years, just as you and David need to make choices about your finances." "We got another notice from the mortgage company," David said, his voice low, "and the school won't let the kids register for next year unless we pay the outstanding balance." "I'm sorry to hear that," Martha said, and she meant it. Not for them, but for Olivia and Noah. "Sorry?" Jennifer's voice rose. "You did this to us." "No, Jennifer. You did this to yourselves. You chose to live beyond your means. You chose to rely on my support rather than adjust your lifestyle. Those were your choices, not mine." David sank onto the sofa, head in his hands. "We can't afford the house without your help, Mom. We'll have to sell. The kids will have to change schools. Everything we've built." "Everything I paid for," Martha corrected gently. He looked up, his expression pained. "Yes. Everything you paid for. Is that what you want to hear? That we've been living off your generosity? Fine. We have been. But cutting us off without warning. The warning was 7 years in the making, David. Every time you treated me like an ATM rather than a mother. Every time you excluded me from family decisions while expecting me to fund them. The Christmas exclusion was just the final signal that I needed to stop enabling this dynamic." Jennifer paced the room, agitated. "So that's it? You're punishing us because we wanted one Christmas to ourselves?" Martha shook her head. "This isn't punishment, Jennifer. It's a correction. I've consulted with my financial advisor. At the rate I was supporting you, I would have been completely out of savings within 4 years. What then? Would you have supported me?" The question hung in the air. David and Jennifer exchanged glances but didn't answer. That's what I thought, Martha said quietly. What about the children? David asked. They didn't do anything wrong. No, they didn't. That's why I'm setting up education trusts for both of them. The money will go directly to their tuition, not through you or Jennifer. Jennifer's eyes widened. You're still paying for their school? I'm ensuring they have educational opportunities. That's different from bankrolling your lifestyle. David looked up, a mix of relief and shame on his face. Mom, thank you for the kids. It was the first genuine gratitude she'd heard from him in years. There are conditions, Martha continued. The trust will cover their education through college, provided they maintain certain grade standards, but it doesn't cover extracurriculars, uniforms, or other expenses. Those are your responsibility as parents. Jennifer looked like she wanted to argue but thought better of it. The offer was too generous to refuse, even with conditions. What about the house? David asked. That's your decision to make. If you can't afford it, selling might be the responsible choice. But, David, Martha interrupted gently, you're 45 years old. It's time to stand on your own feet, both of you. He fell silent. The truth of her words finally sinking in. From her bedroom, Martha could hear Olivia and Noah laughing at something on TV. The sound reminded her of what was really important here. Not the house, not the prestige, but the family bonds that had been stretched so thin. The children are welcome to visit me anytime, she said. And so are you. As family, not as financial dependents. David nodded slowly. I understand. Jennifer looked less convinced, but she remained silent. It wasn't a perfect resolution. There were still hurt feelings, still adjustments to be made, but it was a start. A start to a new chapter where she valued herself enough to say no, and where maybe, just maybe, they would learn to value her for more than her checkbook. 3 months later, Martha stood on the screened porch of her yellow cottage, watching the sunrise over the Atlantic. Sea Pines had quickly become home in a way her condo never had. The small community was filled with people in similar life stages, most retired, many reinventing themselves after loss or major life changes. She'd joined a book club that met weekly at the community center. She'd taken up watercolor painting, something she'd always wanted to try but never had time for. She'd even made friends with her neighbors on both sides, Harriet, a retired librarian who kept her supplied with mystery novels, and Ben, a widower who shared her interest in gardening. Her phone chimed with a text message from Olivia, Grandma, can we still come this weekend? Dad says yes, but Mom is being weird about it. Martha smiled and texted back, of course. I can't wait to see you. So much had changed in 3 months. David and Jennifer had indeed sold the Tudor house, moving to a smaller home in a less prestigious neighborhood. David had taken a steady job with an established investment firm, giving up his struggling independent practice. Jennifer had started working full-time at her real estate agency rather than treating it as a hobby. The children had transferred to the local public school. Olivia had initially been devastated but quickly found her place in the advanced literature program. Noah had adjusted even more easily, thriving in the school's robotics club. Her relationship with David was slowly healing. Our weekly phone calls were stilted at first, but gradually became more natural. He had finally acknowledged, without prompting, how much she had sacrificed for them. The apology had been awkward, but sincere. Jennifer remained distant, still resentful of the changes forced upon her lifestyle. She rarely joined their video calls and had yet to visit Martha's new home. Martha tried not to let it bother her. Some relationships needed more time to heal. Others never would. The doorbell rang, interrupting her morning reflection. She wasn't expecting anyone. She opened the door to find David standing there alone. David, what a surprise. I wasn't expecting you until the weekend with the children. He shifted awkwardly on the porch. I know. I wanted to come early to talk. Just us. Martha invited him in, watching as he took in her new home. The cottage was nothing like her old condo, bright and airy, decorated with coastal colors and comfortable furniture. Paintings from her new hobby hung on the walls alongside photographs of the family. "This is nice, Mom," he said, sounding genuinely impressed. "It suits you." "Thank you. I love it here." They settled in the living room with coffee. David seemed nervous, fidgeting with his cup. "How's the new job?" Martha asked, breaking the silence. "Good. Steady, less pressure than trying to run my own firm." He hesitated. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few months." "Oh." He set his cup down. "I was angry at first, felt betrayed, like you'd pulled the rug out from under us without warning." Martha nodded, but didn't interrupt. "But then I started looking at our expenses, really looking at them for the first time in years, and I realized." He shook his head. "We were living completely beyond our means. The house, the schools, Jennifer's shopping, my attempts to keep up with wealthier colleagues. None of it was sustainable." "No," Martha agreed softly. "It wasn't. We should have been more responsible. I should have been more responsible. Instead, I let you shoulder the burden." He met her eyes directly. "I'm sorry, Mom. Truly sorry." The apology hung in the air between them. Simple, but profound. "Thank you, David. That means a lot. The thing is," he continued, "I never really saw how much you were giving up. I just assumed you had plenty, that it wasn't a hardship." "You never asked." "No, I didn't." He ran a hand through his hair. "And I never thought about what would happen to you down the road if you kept supporting us. That was selfish." Martha reached over and squeezed his hand. "We both made mistakes. I should have been more transparent about my situation." "No, Mom. This one's on me. I was taking advantage, even if I didn't want to admit it to myself." They talked for another hour, more openly than they had in years. David told her about the adjustments they'd made, downsizing, budgeting, living within their actual income for the first time. It hadn't been easy, but they were managing. "The kids are actually doing better," he admitted. "Their new school has programs ours didn't, and they seem less stressed. I think they were picking up on our financial anxiety more than we realized. Children are perceptive that way." He nodded. "Olivia talks about you all the time. She's so excited." "For this weekend, me too." David hesitated. "Jennifer might come this time." "She's trying." "I'd like that," Martha said, and meant it. After he left to check into his hotel, Martha returned to her porch, reflecting on their conversation. It wasn't perfect reconciliation, but it was honest, a new foundation built on truth rather than financial dependence. That weekend was the first time all four of them visited Martha's cottage. Jennifer was stiff at first, but softened as she saw how happy the children were to be with Martha. Olivia and Noah spent hours exploring the beach, collecting shells, and helping Martha in her small garden. They had a simple dinner on the porch, watching the sunset over the water. No catering, no pretense, just family being family. "Grandma," Olivia said as they cleared the dishes, "I like your house better than our old one." "Oh, why is that?" "It feels happy here." She glanced toward her parents, lowering her voice. "Our old house always felt, I don't know, tense, like Mom and Dad were worried all the time." Out of the mouths of babes. "Sometimes smaller is better," Martha told her. "Not just houses, but lives too. Less stuff, less worry." She nodded sagely. "Plus, you have the ocean." "That I do." Later that evening, after the children were asleep in the guest room, David, Jennifer, and Martha sat on the porch with glasses of wine. The conversation was sometimes awkward, sometimes warm, but increasingly genuine. "The education trust for the children," Jennifer said suddenly. "I haven't thanked you properly for that." Martha nodded, acknowledging her words. "It means a lot," she continued, "knowing their education is secure. Even if we..." She glanced at David. "Even if we're still figuring out our finances," he finished for her. "They deserve that security," Martha said. And I'm happy I can provide it. Jennifer took a sip of wine, her next words clearly difficult for her. I'm sorry about Christmas, about excluding you. It was unkind. It wasn't a complete apology for everything, but it was a start. Thank you, Jennifer. As they prepared to leave on Sunday, Olivia hugged Martha tightly. Can we come for Christmas, Grandma? Here at the beach? Martha looked at David and Jennifer, raising an eyebrow in question. David smiled. We'd like that, Mom, if the invitation is open. It is. Always. Martha watched them drive away, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The relationship was healing. Not perfect, but healing. They were rebuilding on new terms, with clearer boundaries and more honest communication. That night, Martha sat on her porch swing, listening to the rhythmic sound of waves against the shore. The decision she'd made 3 months ago, to stop the financial support, to value herself enough to say no, had been the right one. Painful, yes, complicated, absolutely, but right. She had learned that true family doesn't depend on financial transactions. True love doesn't come with invoices attached. And sometimes, the most generous thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their dependence. As for her, she had found a new life. A simpler one, yes, but richer in all the ways that truly mattered: new friends, new hobbies, new perspectives, and a family relationship that, while still healing, was finally based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. At brunch, her daughter-in-law had said, "We've decided not to invite you for Christmas." Martha had just nodded. But when she canceled the catering and stopped paying the mortgage, suddenly everyone had time to call her. Sometimes it takes losing something to realize its true value. They had lost their financial safety net. Martha had gained her self-respect, and in the end, perhaps we had all found something more valuable: the chance to build a relationship based on genuine connection rather than silent transaction. As she watched the stars appear one by one over the ocean, Martha smiled. This Christmas would be different. Smaller, simpler, but infinitely more meaningful. And she wouldn't be missing it for the world.